insurance, they would have started with ways to try and make it cheaper to provide medical services. Insurance, just getting insured, doesn't affect the availability of health care in an area, and it doesn't affect the expense of providing health services. It doesn't. To start with a rule that requires you to have insurance and then not put any kind of safeguards in place as far as what an insurance company can actually charge you for these policies is the first step that they didn't care. This is an intermediary step. It was a go-between. They want a single-payer system. They want completely, totally socialized medicine. So here's the plan. They throw in this half-baked idea, get enough people involved that it looks like it might almost be viable, and then they let the insurance companies do what they have to do in order to maintain some level of profitability while operating within the guidelines of this law. That works twofold. They know, number one, the insurance companies are going to have to continue to raise rates just to try and maintain any type of profit margin. Most insurance companies that were involved with the ObamaCare exchanges have already given up the concept of a profit margin and are just trying to find a profit at all. Most of the non-profits are dropping out at the end of this year. They've lost billions of dollars because you have people trying to provide services and trying to pay for services that have no idea what the cost of these services should be, so they're willing to pay whatever. And in the process, they lose a ton of money. They're not getting enough folks in. They were servicing the poorest part of the ObamaCare constituency. So these are the people that can afford the least to move to one of the other companies who are charging 70 to 80% more for roughly the same type of coverage. Why? Because these are people that have been in the business for a while already, and they know that it's expensive when you're actually going to be paying for all these different services. So here you are. This year, it varies from state to state, but the most common number I've seen in most states, the average bump up from last year's to this coming year's policies is about 35%. A 35 to 36% increase in your insurance premium. The one that you are required by law to have, or pay a penalty. Well, if they're really that concerned about your health, why give you the opt-out option of paying a penalty in the first place? I mean, that should have been your first clue. They're not interested. Well, actually, it should have been about your third or fourth clue. Like I said, the very first clue is they're going to mandate that you have to have insurance, but they're not going to put any kind of underlying rules as to how much an insurance company can charge you. That should have been your very first clue, that this was never about your well-being. This was about getting what they want. What they want in this instance is socialized medicine. They want a single-payer system. They want you to want it too. They knew it was just a matter of time before the insurance companies would have to raise their rates to a point that most people couldn't afford it. So then they're trapped in this rock and a hard place. The people who couldn't get insurance before, now, 2-3 years down the road, can't get insurance now either. Only now, what makes it worse is the people who could get insurance, who were happy with their insurance, who were happy with their doctors before Obamacare came along, had those policies disappear, not even available. They had to pick something else that didn't provide the same level of coverage and did cost more money in order to maintain a semblance of following the law and still trying to provide the insurance protection that they feel like their family needs and deserves. Many of those people are not going to be able to afford to continue under the new guidelines, because if you're one of the fortunate people that gets a advanced tax credit, a subsidy, as it's being referred to in the general terminology, if you're getting a subsidy to help pay for your monthly benefits, the expectation is that that's not likely to change. So the cost of your policy is going up 36%, and you're still getting the same level of subsidy, then it's still conceivable that the amount of money that you're paying out of your pocket, if you keep the same policy, could more than double. So as far as you're concerned, it doesn't matter that it was only 36%. It's 100% to you, because you're paying twice what you had to pay before if you can afford it. And let's face facts, folks. A lot of the people that made the effort to try and comply with this law faced the very fact that they could not afford to continue with an increase. So many people are going to be faced with the decision now to just forget about insurance, pay the penalty, take less insurance at some point. And I don't even know if a policy is going to exist in this year. I haven't done enough research yet. I haven't looked at the exchanges yet. I don't know if a policy is going to exist this coming year that it would actually be cheaper to have that policy. It would have to be one of the worst ones down in the bronze level. Be cheaper to have that policy than to just pay the penalty at the end. But if that's what you come to, what has been fixed in healthcare? Your availability is not any different. You're having to pay a penalty, and you're still having to pay all your healthcare expenses out of pocket. Where was it fixed? It wasn't. But here's what they wanted. They wanted this to happen, and make no mistake about it, because they knew the insurance companies would have to raise rates, right? They knew eventually it would become completely unaffordable. One thing they probably didn't know is how much it would actually cost them to pay their taxes on their Cadillac plans. That's why Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid actually this past week were trying to introduce an amendment bill to ObamaCare to lower the taxes on the Cadillac plans. Actually, they wanted to get rid of them. So we'll see how that plays out. But how's that for hypocrisy? Multimillionaires who happen to be lawmakers are going to write themselves a new little niche so that they don't have to pay their fair share, because that's what all taxes are, right? Our fair share. That's what we keep getting told. It's unpatriotic not to pay our taxes, right? See, they can afford insurance at any rate. And plus, most of their insurance is already covered through the government anyway. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you are an American citizen and you are a taxpayer, you're paying for theirs anyway, but they still would be responsible for their Cadillac policy charge. They're trying to find a way to get out of paying that. So, congratulations. But they wanted the system to collapse. They wanted it to be completely unaffordable. They wanted you, the average everyday citizen, to be pulling your hair out, trying to figure out how you're going to insure your family, how are you going to get access to the health care that you need, but you cannot afford, because they wanted you to cry out to the government and say, you screwed this up, now you fix it. But you see, best of all, they don't even have to take the heat. They don't have to take the negative side of it from the majority of the American citizens, because they paint this up as being, well, it's the insurance companies raising the rates. It's the insurance companies that are the bad guys. They're the ones. Their evil, profiteering ways. And while somewhere around 46 to 47% of the American public are going to be too smart for that, and they're going to know right off the bat, you broke this, you need to fix it. Unfortunately, another 47 to 48% of the American public are going to take a big old swig of that Kool-Aid, buy into everything that they're being told by these politicians that are stringing them along from the beginning, and they're going to actually think this is the insurance company's fault. They will place blame on the insurance company, and they will buy in a little bit further to the idea that socialized medicine is the solution. That is the answer. You're being played. But Paul Ryan, rather than take on Planned Parenthood or take on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or, of course, that's really more something the Senate should be taking up, but the House could still pass a resolution. Rather than taking on this farce that is Obamacare, anything the least bit controversial, anything that needs the attention because it will actually help the American people, no, too controversial, too hard, not the tone I want to set. It's dividing issues, not a bringing together kind of issue. So he chooses to work on the highway bill first. Ladies and gentlemen, we need true leadership. And as we move ever closer into the election year coming up in 2016, we need to be very mindful of who we vote for, not just for president, but also to the seats in the Senate that are up for grabs, the seats that are in the House that are up for grabs, and the same thing with our state governments at the governorship, at the representative level, at the Senate level, however your state government is divided up, whoever your representatives are, we need to be very careful. And I don't care if they have an R or a D at the end of their name. We need to make sure that these are people that understand the struggles that are faced every day by the average American and who are willing to stand on principles as opposed to interest. Liberal logic paradoxes are on display, but in most cases there's no paradox at all. There's just hypocrisy. That's pretty easy to find, and you can find out the difference for these people just by asking them a few simple questions. If you were one of these people that were celebrating the Keystone XL Pipeline getting rejected, tell me, why are you against the cleanup efforts of the tar sands? Why are you willing to put the environment at greater risk by having it transported by means of diesel? Why are you willing to allow politicians and DC cronies, worldwide cronies like George Soros, to continue to profit billions of dollars a year rather than taking the more environmentally friendly approach of the pipeline? You run into a liberal that was celebrating this, you need to ask them those questions. Find out why they support George Soros raping the environment, but not the Koch brothers. Because guess what? It's the same result. Condemn one, condemn them both. I've silenced a lot of people trying to have arguments with me over this week when I asked them how much they knew about the tar sands, where the oil was coming from, what was actually being done with the oil, why we were going ahead and refining it. Most of these people didn't know. You need to know. Find out. This is the part where you use your brain. Do a little of your research. Let me play for you, just for the heck of it, the old roll-in. This is what we do here. Listen carefully as I play this. Listen to what is said.
Delving past the headlines.
Because the headlines are only cells.
The media bias. Exposing the propaganda. And challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
That's the old roll-in, and that's exactly the point that I've tried to make each and every broadcast. You have to delve past the headline to understand what's going on, because the headline is just trying to sell you on something. That's all. The media bias is in every story they tell. The propaganda is in every story they tell.